Patriotism means to stand by the country. It does not mean to stand by the president. There is but one answer to terrorism, and it is best delivered with a Winchester rifle. This country will not be a good place for any of us to live in unless we make it a good place for all of us to live in. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. Knowing what's right doesn't mean much unless you do what's right. Patriotism means to stand by the country. It does not mean to stand by the president or any other public official, save exactly to the degree in which he himself stands by the country. It is patriotic to support him insofar as he efficiently serves the country. It is unpatriotic not to oppose him to the exact extent that by inefficiency or otherwise he fails in his duty to stand by the country. In either event, it is unpatriotic not to tell the truth, whether about the president or anyone else. What a man does for himself dies with him. What a man does for his community lives long after he's gone. Nothing worth having was ever achieved without effort. Do what you can, with what you have, where you are. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says he is an American, but something else also, isn't an American at all. We have room for but one flag, the American flag. We have room for but one language here, and that is the English language, and we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is a loyalty to the American people. In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing, the next best thing is the wrong thing, and the worst thing you can do is nothing. Behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. To destroy this invisible government, to befoul the unholy alliance between corrupt business and corrupt politics is the first task of the statesmanship of today. If you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't sit for a month. Do something now. If not you, who? If not here, where? If not now, when? To educate a man in mind and not in morals is to educate a menace to society. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Believe you can and you're halfway there. The things that will destroy America are prosperity at any price, peace at any price, safety first instead of duty first, the love of soft living, and the get-rich-quick theory of life. No man is above the law and no man is below it, nor do we ask any man's permission when we ask him to obey it. A thorough knowledge of the Bible is worth more than a college education. Most of us tiptoe through life in order to make it safely to death. Courage, hard work, self-mastery, and intelligent effort are all essential to successful life. When they call the roll in the Senate, the senators do not know whether to answer present or not guilty. There is no room in this country for hyphenated Americanism. The one absolutely certain way of bringing this nation to ruin, of preventing all possibility of its continuing to be a nation at all, would be to permit it to become a tangle of squabbling nationalities. You can't choose your potential, but you can choose to fulfill it. It is hard to fail, but it is worse never to have tried to succeed. Here is your country. Cherish these natural wonders, cherish the natural resources, cherish the history and romance as a sacred heritage for your children and your children's children. Do not let selfish men or greedy interests skin your country of its beauty, its riches, or its romance. Our government, national and state, must be freed from the sinister influence or control of special interests. Exactly as the special interests of cotton and slavery threatened our political integrity before the Civil War, so now the great special business interests too often control and corrupt the men and methods of government for their own profit. We must drive the special interests out of politics. The bosses of the Democratic Party and the bosses of the Republican Party alike have a closer grip than ever before on the party machines in the states and in the nation. This crooked control of both the old parties by the beneficiaries of political and business privilege renders it hopeless to expect any far-reaching and fundamental service from either. Every immigrant who comes here should be required within 5 years to learn English or leave the country. To announce that there must be no criticism of the president, or that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable to the American public. Nothing but the truth should be spoken about him or anyone else. But it is even more important to tell the truth, pleasant or unpleasant, about him than about anyone else. The worst lesson that can be taught to a man is to rely upon others and to whine over his sufferings. A man who is good enough to shed his blood for the country is good enough to be given a square deal afterwards. Far better is it to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much, because they live in a gray twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. He who makes no mistakes makes no progress. There should be at least 10 times the number of rifles in the country as there are now. The most important single ingredient in the formula of success is knowing how to get along with people. Speak softly and carry a big stick, you will go far. No man is worth his salt who is not ready at all times to risk his well-being, to risk his body, to risk his life, in a great cause. A soft, easy life is not worth living if it impairs the fiber of brain and heart and muscle. We must dare to be great, and we must realize that greatness is the fruit of toil and sacrifice and high courage. For us is the life of action, of strenuous performance of duty. Let us live in the harness, striving mightily. Let us rather run the risk of wearing out than rusting out. The best executive is one who has sense enough to pick good people to do what he wants done, and self-restraint enough to keep from meddling with them while they do it. Comparison is the thief of joy. The only man who makes no mistakes is the man who never does anything. Do not be afraid to make mistakes, providing you do not make the same one twice. Of one man in especial, beyond anyone else, the citizens of a republic should beware, and that is of the man who appeals to them to support him on the ground that he is hostile to other citizens of the republic, that he will secure for those who elect him, in one shape or another, profit at the expense of other citizens of the republic. It makes no difference whether he appeals to class hatred or class interest, to religious or anti-religious prejudice. The man who makes such an appeal should always be presumed to make it for the sake of furthering his own interest. The mother is the one supreme asset of national life. She is more important by far than the successful statesman, or businessman, or artist, or scientist. These international bankers and Rockefeller Standard Oil interests control the majority of newspapers and the columns of these papers to club into submission or drive out of public office officials who refuse to do the bidding of the powerful corrupt cliques which compose the invisible government. A nation that still needs to distinguish between stealing an election and stealing a new pair of shoes is not completely civilized yet. This country has nothing to fear from the crooked man who fails. We put him in jail. It is the crooked man who succeeds who is a threat to this country. A man who has never gone to school may steal from a freight car. But if he has a university education, he may steal the whole railroad. Honesty first, then courage, then brains, and all are indispensable. Make preparations in advance. You never have trouble if you are prepared for it. It is always better to be an original than an imitation. The one quality which sets one man apart from another, the key which lifts one to every aspiration while others are caught up in the mire of mediocrity, is not talent, formal education, nor intellectual brightness, it is self-discipline. With self-discipline all things are possible. Without it, even the simplest goal can seem like the impossible dream. No man who is not willing to bear arms and to fight for his rights can give a good reason why he should be entitled to the privilege of living in a free community. It is necessary for the welfare of the nation that men's lives be based on the principles of the Bible. No man, educated or uneducated, can afford to be ignorant of the Bible. Far and away the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. Any man who tries to excite class hatred, sectional hate, hate of creeds, any kind of hatred in our community, though he may affect to do it in the interest of the class he is addressing, is in the long run with absolute certainty that class's own worst enemy. The death knell of the Republic had rung as soon as the active power became lodged in the hands of those who sought, not to do justice to all citizens, rich and poor alike, but to stand for one special class and for its interests as opposed to the interests of others. Your attitude about who you are and what you have is a very little thing that makes a very big difference. The old parties are husks, with no real soul within either, divided on artificial lines, boss-ridden and privilege-controlled, each a jumble of incongruous elements, and neither daring to speak out wisely and fearlessly on what should be said on the vital issues of the day. To announce that there must be no criticism of the president is morally treasonable to the American public. If we lose the virile, manly qualities and sink into a nation of mere hucksters, putting gain over national honor and subordinating everything to mere ease of life, then we shall indeed reach a condition worse than that of the ancient civilizations in the years of their decay. Every child has inside him an aching void for excitement, and if we don't fill it with something which is exciting and interesting and good for him, he will fill it with something which is exciting and interesting and which isn't good for him. With great victory comes great sacrifice. We can have no 50-50 allegiance in this country. Either a man is an American and nothing else, or he is not an American at all. Get action. Do things, be sane, don't fritter away your time. Create, act, take a place wherever you are and be somebody. Get action. Profanity is the parlance of the fool. Why curse when there is such a magnificent language with which to discourse? With a great moral issue involved, neutrality does not serve righteousness. For to be neutral between right and wrong is to serve wrong. The teachings of the Bible are so interwoven and entwined with our whole civic and social life that it would be literally impossible for us to figure to ourselves what that life would be if these teachings were removed. You cannot create prosperity by law. Sustained thrift, industry, application, intelligence are the only things that ever do, or ever will, create prosperity. But you can very easily destroy prosperity by law. In the first place, we should insist that if the immigrant who comes here in good faith becomes an American and assimilates himself to us, he shall be treated on an exact equality with everyone else, for it is an outrage to discriminate against any such man because of creed, or birthplace, or origin. But this is predicated upon the man's becoming in very fact an American, and nothing but an American. No greater wrong can ever be done than to put a good man at the mercy of a bad, while telling him not to defend himself or his fellows. In no way can the success of evil be made surer or quicker. Americans learn only from catastrophe and not from experience. Every thinking man, when he thinks, realizes that the teachings of the Bible are so interwoven and intertwined with our whole civic and social life that it would be literally, I do not mean figuratively, but literally impossible for us to figure what the loss would be if these teachings were removed. We would lose all the standards by which we now judge both public and private morals, all the standards toward which we, with more or less resolution, strive to raise ourselves. Justice consists not in being neutral between right and wrong, but finding out the right and upholding it, wherever found, against the wrong. The great body of our citizens shoot less as time goes on. We should encourage rifle practice among schoolboys, and indeed among all classes, as well as in the military services by every means in our power. Thus, and not otherwise, may we be able to assist in preserving peace in the world. The first step in the direction of preparation to avert war if possible, and to be fit for war if it should come, is to teach men to shoot. The man who really counts in the world is the doer, not the mere critic, the man who actually does the work, even if roughly and imperfectly, not the man who only talks or writes about how it ought to be done. Courtesy is as much a mark of a gentleman as courage. A vote is like a rifle, its usefulness depends upon the character of the user. The joy in life is his who has the heart to demand it. A typical vice of American politics is the avoidance of saying anything real on real issues. In the long run, the most unpleasant truth is a safer companion than a pleasant falsehood. The good citizen will demand liberty for himself, and as a matter of pride he will see to it that others receive the liberty which he thus claims as his own. Probably the best test of true love of liberty in any country is the way in which minorities are treated in that country. Not only should there be complete liberty in matters of religion and opinion, but complete liberty for each man to lead his life as he desires, provided only that in so doing he does not wrong his neighbor. The reason fat men are good-natured is they can neither fight nor run. Let us rather run the risk of wearing out than rusting out. The man who loves other countries as much as his own stands on a level with the man who loves other women as much as he loves his own wife. Be practical as well as generous in your ideals. Keep your eyes on the stars, but remember to keep your feet on the ground. Life brings sorrows and joys alike. It is what a man does with them, not what they do to him, that is the true test of his mettle. Believe you can do it and you are halfway there. No educated man can afford to be ignorant of the Bible. All the resources we need are in the mind. Old age is like everything else. To make a success of it, you've got to start young. We must diligently strive to make our young men decent, God-fearing, law-abiding, honor-loving, justice-doing, and also fearless and strong. Certain rich men, whose lives are evil and corrupt, are the representatives of predatory wealth accumulated by all forms of inequity, from the oppression of wage workers to unfair methods of crushing out competition. If given the choice between righteousness and peace, I choose righteousness. Every man who parrots the cry of "stand by the president" without adding the proviso "so far as he serves the republic" takes an attitude as essentially unmanly as that of any Stuart royalist who championed the doctrine that the king could do no wrong. No self-respecting and intelligent free man could take such an attitude. It tires me to talk to rich men. You expect a man of millions, the head of a great industry, to be a man worth hearing, but as a rule they don't know anything outside their own business. There is not a man of US who does not at times need a helping hand to be stretched out to him, and then shame upon him who will not stretch out the helping hand to his brother. It is both foolish and wicked to teach the average man who is not well off that some wrong or injustice has been done him, and that he should hope for redress elsewhere than in his own industry, honesty, and intelligence. Big jobs usually go to the men who prove their ability to outgrow small ones. I put myself in the way of things happening, and they happened. Behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. The wise and honorable and Christian thing to do is to treat each black man and each white man on his merits as a man, giving him no more and no less than he is worthy to have. Free speech exercised both individually and through a free press is a necessity in any country where people are themselves free. People ask the difference between a leader and a boss. The leader leads, and the boss drives. When the time of danger comes, all Americans, whatever their social standing, whatever their creed, whatever the training they have received, no matter from what section of the country they have come, stand together as men, as Americans, and are content to face the same fate and do the same duties because fundamentally they all alike have the common purpose to serve the glorious flag of their common country. The Constitution was made for the people and not the people for the Constitution. No man who is corrupt, no man who condones corruption in others, can possibly do his duty by the community. One of the fundamental necessities in a representative government such as ours is to make certain that the men to whom the people delegate their power shall serve the people by whom they are elected, and not the special interests. I believe that every national officer, elected or appointed, should be forbidden to perform any service or receive any compensation, directly or indirectly, from interstate corporations. And a similar provision could not fail to be useful within the states. If a man does not have an ideal and try to live up to it, then he becomes a mean, base and sordid creature, no matter how successful. But this is predicated upon the man's becoming in very fact an American and nothing but an American. If he tries to keep segregated with men of his own origin and separated from the rest of America, then he isn't doing his part as an American. There can be no divided allegiance here. We have room for but one language here, and that is the English language, for we intend to see that the crucible turns our people out as Americans, of American nationality, and not as dwellers in a polyglot boarding house, and we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is loyalty to the American people. The United States does not have a choice as to whether or not it will or will not play a great part in the world. Fate has made that choice for us. The only question is whether we will play the part well or badly. The only time you really live fully is from 30 to 60. The young are slaves to dreams, the old servants of regrets. Only the middle-aged have all their five senses in the keeping of their wits. Everything is un-American that tends either to government by a plutocracy or government by a mob. To divide along the lines of section or caste or creed is un-American. All privileges based on wealth and all enmity to honest men merely because they are wealthy are un-American, both of them equally so. The things that will destroy America are prosperity at any price, peace at any price, safety first instead of duty first, the love of soft living, and the get-rich-quick theory of life. No man should receive $1 unless that dollar has been fairly earned. It is essential that there should be organization of labor. This is an era of organization. Capital organizes, and therefore labor must organize. There can be no effective control of corporations while their political activity remains. To put an end to it will be neither a short nor an easy task, but it can be done. Corporate expenditures for political purposes, and especially such expenditures by public service corporations, have supplied one of the principal sources of corruption in our political affairs. The dull, purblind folly of the very rich men, their greed and arrogance, and the corruption in business and politics have tended to produce a very unhealthy condition. The credit belongs to those who are actually in the arena, who strive valiantly, who know the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spend themselves in a worthy cause, who at best know the triumph of high achievement, and who, at worst, if they fail while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Rhetoric is a poor substitute for action, and we have trusted only to rhetoric. If we are really to be a great nation, we must not merely talk, we must act big. Don't hit at all if it is honorably possible to avoid hitting, but never hit soft. It may be that the voice of the people is the voice of God in 51 cases out of 100, but in the remaining 49, it is quite as likely to be the voice of the devil, of, what is still worse, the voice of a fool. I do not dislike, but I certainly have no especial respect or admiration for, and no trust in, the typical big-moneyed men of my country. I do not regard them as furnishing sound opinion as respects either foreign or domestic business.